Well, good afternoon, everyone. Looks like we still have a few people popping in, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. This is Rebecca Dallin. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Stormwater Quality here at the City of Oklahoma City. I would like to officially welcome everyone to our final installment of this year's Floatables webinar series. We've already got next year's webinar series in the works, and we will share a little bit about it later in today's program. We hope you register for the new series to continue your participation and enjoy this learning opportunity. We'll begin today's program momentarily, so I want to provide some information to help enhance everyone's experience during the presentation today. In order to reduce background noise, we ask that everyone keep themselves muted during the presentation. If anyone has any questions, feel free to type them into chat. Brooke and I will be monitoring chat for questions, and we will have our guest speaker answer as many questions as we have time for today. If anyone would like to receive a certificate of attendance for today's program, feel free to email Brooke on that, and I'm going to put her contact information into chat at this time. Each of the presentations in this webinar series will be available within a week or so after the scheduled webinar date on our website under Stormwater Workshops. This section is called Our 2021 Floatables Webinar Series, and today's session, of course, will be the December edition. I will post a link to that website where you can find those presentations toward the end of today's program. We are keeping these presentations up on the website indefinitely, so anytime you'd like to review them, they should be available. If anyone has any questions at this time, please feel free to type them into chat. But without further ado, I will begin playing the very short Floatables series welcome presentation. Good afternoon and welcome to our monthly Stormwater Quality webinar series. This has been our first attempt at a themed series, and we hope everyone has been enjoying the presentations and is learning something new. Our theme for 2021, of course, is Floatables, blowable material that could or does end up in a waterway. During this series, you've had the opportunity to hear from several different guest speakers throughout the year. We have also included some more traditional content for our industrial and construction stormwater permittees while tying those subjects into the overall theme. As we've briefly mentioned, each of the presentations will be available online within a week or so after the presentation is aired live. It will be available on the workshops section of our Stormwater Quality website. I'll post a direct link to that page into chat toward the end of today's presentation. Since today is the final session for the 2021 series, we wanted to be sure to let everyone know that if you're interested in continuing along on our monthly journey, please sign up for the 2022 series. The link will be posted into chat, so please use it to register. The series will be moving from Tuesdays in 2021 to Wednesdays in 2022. It will still be from 1 to 2 p.m. You can see the dates and topics on this slide. During the January presentation, you will hear the construction section supervisor describe how to implement and maintain a land disturbance stormwater pollution prevention plan. In February, you will hear about the stormwater pollution prevention plans for industrial facilities. March will feature our first guest speaker of the year, Jeanette Nance with Keep Oklahoma Beautiful. The series will continue with topics from wastewater utilities, the DEQ, and a feature in September discussing the utilization of compost for erosion control. We hope to see you next year. Don't forget to sign up to be added to those calendar items. It seems that we're going to be rather ambitious this year, since we're adding a virtual Lunch and Learn program to the mix. You will need to register for each of these events separately. We're posting the link for the February presentation into chat, but you can always reach out to Brooke for more information. Some of the vendors sponsoring these events have new products and tools that you may not have heard of before. So please be sure to tune in to those presentations to learn something new which might help streamline your stormwater protection practices. As always, anytime we provide information regarding specific vendors or products, it is not to be considered an endorsement. We provide the information to help you in your research to determine the best products and services that will benefit your own stormwater program. Some of our presentations will be live and some will be pre-recorded. We always do our best to provide as much detailed, accurate information as possible while also working with the presenter's strengths and their schedule. We live and work in a beautiful community here in Oklahoma City. For more information about stormwater, what we're up to, and local regulations, be sure to visit our website. Up next is the main presentation for today's webinar. Today we're going to hear from T.O. Bowman. Mr. Bowman directs the Office of Sustainability in the City of Oklahoma City's Planning Department. In that role, he develops policy and manages grants, including energy efficiency upgrades funded through the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, and projects via the Federal Highway Authority, Department of Energy, and Environmental Protection Agency. In summer of 2020, Mr. Bowman led the office through the adoption of the city's first sustainability plan, Adapt OKC. Previous to his time at the city, he coordinated energy efficiency, sustainability planning and outreach efforts for the state of Oklahoma's Department of Central Services. Didn't know I was this nervous, sorry. Mr. Bowman is a lead green associate, has served on the U.S. Green Buildings Council's Market Leadership Advisory Board for Oklahoma, Board of Directors for the Oklahoma Green Schools Program, a nonprofit seeking to advance environmental education in the state, and is a past board member of Sustainable OKC. Again, if anyone has any questions during today's presentation, please be sure to type them into chat. T.O., please share your screen and begin your presentation.
Hey, thank you, Rebecca. I will hopefully land this. Is the proper screen showing the actual slide?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that introduction and for having me today. I'm very pleased to be here and to be speaking with all of you. I am T.O. Bowman, as she mentioned, the program planner that leads the sustainability office that's housed in the planning department. So today I'm going to cover at least part of the presentation. We'll discuss the topic of the webinar series, Floatables, but definitely it's going to have probably a little bit broader scope and going to be looking at a lot of the plans that the city has together, trying to address some major issues that were identified and challenges that we face going forward. So today I'll be talking about the Oklahoma City's context, the geography and development patterns, but also definitely how that affects our stormwater quality and floatables that end up in there. So one thing that I don't know that we can give a presentation without addressing how enormous Oklahoma City is. We're one of the largest cities that doesn't have a consolidated county and city government in the country. And so, one symptom of our size is that as we were a city that developed alongside the advent of the automobile, is that we ended up with a very large footprint, and 4% of this entire land area that you're looking at is made up of the land use parking lots, which I'll come back to later in the presentation, because that's a pretty important patch. They are pretty important patches of impervious surface throughout. So it's not an accident that we're this big. And again, apologies for the kind of pixelated old graphic here, but this is one of the best ways that I've been able to show this is that we grew at a pretty fast rate, and particularly there in the 60s. So we started as that little yellow dot in the middle, and due to our tax structure, which forces cities to rely on sales tax or consumption as one of our primary revenue sources, we have reached out and gained more than 400 square miles. We added an area bigger than the city of Fort Worth over the course of about 4 years in the 60s in order to preserve that tax base for the future and ensure that we have enough revenue to keep up with city services in a very fast growing city. So again, this is just showing that information in a different way. Our population density increased to a point where we needed to expand the boundaries and then continue to do so again to preserve that tax base. So really important features of that, but it also created some challenges. So it's a positive thing for development, having ample land where people can live in various sizes of lots and different lifestyles that they preserve, that they would like to live in Oklahoma City in a very rural area or a very urban area. And so, but it does present challenges, as the red and orange parts of the map show. It's not easy to provide basic city services to that entire footprint. So with more development happening on the periphery for a variety of reasons, it definitely stretches those resources. It's important to note how we get our water, just tying into our availability, as we and again, many of you on this presentation may already be well versed in this, but we pump water from hundreds of miles away in order to make sure that our population centers have enough both to use within Oklahoma City and for the general metro area to be supported. So it's a very energy intensive function. And in fact, one of the most energy intensive functions of the city is pumping and treating water. And so, the importance of having energy efficient operations and things like that are always preeminent. But again, having water available and clean water for drinking is especially important. So our water resources are not only concerned with pollution that happens within the city, but the pollution that happens across the state and state regulations that guide that. So and on the other end of that equation, our sewer service is arguably a little bit even more difficult to reach the other parts of the city. And in those red and yellow orangish areas, development is happening there, and a lot of septic systems are going in. And so, a high concentration of those without proper education and maintenance and those types of things can present very challenging water quality issues in the future. So those are things that we're aware of and are monitoring and definitely want to be sure that we address in the future. And one of the ways, and these maps that I've just shown came from Plan OKC. So the city's first new comprehensive plan since 1977 was adopted in 2015. And so it set forth some large ideas, a very broad look at development and how it impacts our ability to provide services. The green OKC element in particular, we call out because our office is mentioned specifically in terms of addressing some of the policies in there, but then also we're undergoing a larger code update that I'll reference at the end of the presentation in much more detail and some places you can look for more information there. But to help make our municipal codes more consistent with the vision and the plan of Plan OKC. So the green OKC element, very important to this topic and to our planning efforts that went into Adapt OKC. So again, we chose to call this Adapt OKC for one, because Sustain OKC was already taken as an element of Plan OKC, but mainly Adapt it's a dynamic process. So we're looking to constantly improve, constantly refine our approach, and not just sustain the amount of resources and good things and that we have available, clean air, clean water that we have available for future generations, but we want to create the conditions where future generations can thrive, and we do that by adapting to changing conditions. Again, just to kind of underscore the importance of having a plan like this, Moody's Investor Services issued a white paper in 2019 that without having one of these plans, it will result in greater state and municipal debt in order to finance recovery and adaptation to an increasing number of events that are happening, and very, very high dollar events. So these are billion-dollar climate disasters that have happened within the state of Oklahoma. And you can see the trend line is going up. And so, we're having more events that cost more money. I've got very specific examples of those coming up in a few slides. And I'm sure most of you on this call, if you're from here or have lived here for any amount of time, you too have those top of mind. But it's not just a challenge for Oklahoma. So this is becoming a challenge for the entire United States, and a trend that's happening because hurricanes, straight line winds, drought, all of these things happen in various, and tornadoes even now in areas where they typically don't happen, and very damaging tornadoes. So we're all reaching towards that same pot of recovery money in order to, one, build our community stronger as a preemptive measure, but then also reaching for that pot of money to recover. And so if more and more of these keep happening without proper preparation, it could create very challenging conditions for each state kind of figuring out how we can recover on our own. One thing that has informed our planning, particularly going into Adapt OKC, we worked with the South Central Climate Adaptation Sciences Center and the Southern Climate Impacts Planning Program down in Norman to look at what is our current situation, how does it compare to historical weather patterns, and then also looking forward, what can we project to see in the next 20, 40, 50 years, so that we can appropriately plan our services and things that the city performs. So what you're looking at is just historical data of Oklahoma City's average annual temperature here in the city. Again, the trend line is increasing from 1950 pretty dramatically. We have ups and downs. We have hot years and cold years, but definitely the hot years and the extremely hot years are outweighing what's been traditionally the average annual temperature here. And another way to kind of frame that is to think about an average annual temperature not just in an increase from 80 degrees to 83 degrees. But here, the report that the city was provided shows that we could have a range from anywhere from 2.6 degrees to 5.2 degrees increase in the high emission scenario by mid-century. And so what this translates to is a number of days that we reach more than 100 degrees or extremely hot days. And we could see somewhere between 20 and 30 more days, another month of extremely hot temperatures. And so that affects water temperatures, that affects our drought conditions if we're not getting precipitation at the same rate. And so that becomes a very challenging situation to keep up with. It increases demand for electricity, causes hazardous conditions for people working outside. And again, this is just the translation of that to the number of days. So they're looking at somewhere, between 15 to 30 plus more days of temperatures greater than 100 degrees. So again, it's important to note that an increase like this doesn't mean that we'll not have any cold weather, as evidenced by last February's Arctic snap, but we do expect to see quite a bit more extreme record-breaking heat and longer, drier summers. And with that, I don't have a slide in here for precipitation, but they're projecting about the same amount of annual precipitation. However, that's going to be underscored by being spread out in different parts of the year, and it may happen in more inundation events. When you have warmer atmosphere that can hold moisture, it can hold more of it for longer, and then it all falls at once. And so those are things that contribute to the other primary hazard that was identified going forward, which is flash flooding. And again, water quality issues and certainly floatables associated with that. So I mentioned the impervious surfaces and parking lots being a giant contributor to that. We have a tremendous amount of impervious surfaces in our city. And part of that is one thing that contributes to that, one policy mechanism that contributes to that is our minimum parking requirements for new developments. So everything has to be built kind of for that Black Friday day. And then the rest of the year, the parking lot is sitting there largely empty and contributing to both the urban heat island effect and flash flooding and stormwater runoff that definitely contains contaminants. And so I'm sure, again, most of you on the call are probably familiar with the terminology of urban heat island effect, but it's effectively where the temperatures in an urban area with a lot of pavement, a lot of buildings, rooftops, all these things that are absorbing heat and thermal energy throughout the day, slowly releasing it throughout the night. So also increasing the temperatures at night, but it also affects suburban residential and the periphery as well. So as our urban and urbanized footprint starts to grow, so does this heat dome that again can range from anywhere from 5 to 10 or 15 to 20 degrees warmer in terms of how much warmer it feels. So again, people waiting for buses, vulnerable populations that are particularly sensitive to heat. Those are things that we want to be aware of. And other cities have started to make moves on things like cooling centers and things that can be accessed by the general public to seek relief in those days. And again, there are people in our community that don't have or can't afford air conditioning. And you can't imagine living in Oklahoma for very long without air conditioning. And so being able to support everyone that lives here throughout these conditions is going to be a very important feature. So the first chapter of Adapt OKC that I'll be talking about is the natural and built environment chapter, where we do talk quite a bit about stormwater quality issues, low impact development, and our natural resources. So you can see how this map pretty well overlays with the pervious surface map. Or impervious surface map. So, as we've developed the areas where we have just natural resources that can help recharge aquifers and absorb stormwater, those are getting fewer and fewer in the city. And so this changes the way that water behaves on the land and contributes to higher volumes and a stronger velocity for our stormwater. So that creates challenges for engineers to deal with, and particularly site by site, but also on the city side. So, as we start to see more of those inundation events and flash flooding, again, we have examples here of just large parking lots. Some of these you may recognize. The uses have changed from when they were originally built, but again, that didn't just like instantly change how big the parking lot was or what it's contributing to the community. And so these all exist, and hopefully in the future some policy adjustments can be made so that things are right sized and maybe not, and developers can have other options too, to where it's not just hard impervious surface as the only way to do parking. And again, this is probably preaching to the choir over here, but nutrients, over fertilizing lawns. This is a huge thing already with outdoor irrigation and sometimes with irrigation that's not well monitored. So, one thing I'd like to point to, I know you all heard from Mallory Gotcha this year with the Squeeze Every Drop program and water conservation, but again, just an opportunity to point out the resources that they offer. And I believe OSU Extension is involved in these as well to conduct basically a checkup for sprinkler systems. So, businesses, residents, all of these, everyone's kind of encouraged to do this. But again, a very important consideration, given that those heavy rainfall events and flash flooding also contribute to these, but irrigation does it, I guess, more regularly. And so when you have a tremendous amount of heat, you have really long, hot days. And again, this is going to be something you all are very familiar with, but the blue-green algae blooms, and it's probably a dirty word in this forum to even bring it up to talk about. But it's those are things that when you have runoff from polluted areas or from with a lot of fertilizers, you're going to, and then you have long, hot, dry summers, which again we're projected to have more of. You can have more conditions that can be right for the blue-green algae blooms, and so again they can create health issues, absolutely recreation challenges where and then also just wildlife as well. So the contribution of these large parking lots and connecting with a large amount of heat and more stormwater runoff from flash flooding events, we have some conditions coming in the future that we may want to be prepared for. Again, this is just a kind of a rudiment of a low-level example, I guess, of when development happens. This is something we like to show to the school children when we give presentations to them of, when development happens. It's a lot like the way that we've built our whitewater course. Water flows normally without these big blocks, but we put them in there for, obviously to create whitewater conditions. But the same thing happens in the real world where we have too many impervious surfaces or high concentrations of them, and so it moves the water faster. And creates much more dangerous conditions. In fact, so dangerous that the fire department uses this as swift water training for some of their firefighters. So, it's I guess an analogy that stands there. I mentioned low impact development. So this is something that is a concept that we've talked with Derek and quite a bit. And are looking at ways that we can both provide guidance to private developers and look at ways they can be incorporated in city projects, again, to help not just prepare for what we're experiencing today, but what's to come in the future. So a whole menu of options here. It's not just rain gardens, and it's not just using pervious paving and things like that. It can be other strategies of detention or flow controls, infiltration, just wherever water can be slowed down and then allowed to filter using the plants to help clean that can help us stave off some regulatory challenges that can become very costly and time consuming, but then also keep our waterways healthier by not over inundating them with nutrients. In low impact development, in fact, has been something that the city has talked about for quite a while. We have dating back to 2009 with the Green Infrastructure Task Force that members of Public Works and several other departments and external agencies were part of. But just highlighting from this some of the primary issues and concerns that were identified in that report. Actually pointed to, stormwater discharges, untreated runoff directly connected to storm sewers, these types of challenges, and that still stand today. And so we're going to be looking to work together to kind of address those, and then again expand the options that developers might have and that the city would have in how we deal with stormwater. A good example of parks down at Kitchen Lake, incorporating something where they a nice little rain garden / bioswale with an under drain, where all of the water from the circular parking lot there, and again, this is at Kitchen Lake, so just off the photo there is an actual lake where people can go out fish and interact with all the things. But the important part is most of them are driving there. This is not exactly a place you can walk to very easily. It's a little bit further south, so but when they do, the cars are at least not contributing directly to runoff straight into that lake and causing other challenges. So again, a really good example of something the city's done that we hope to see more of. Other primary considerations from the Natural Built Environment chapter that directly relate to stormwater is, of course, our tree canopy, the expansion and preservation of what we have. And as we start to see these weird unseasonal ice storms that happened in October, like last year, and definitely damaged a tremendous amount of trees due to all the vegetation that was still there. It's important to know what the status of our tree canopy is. So one study that was funded by the Oklahoma City Community Foundation and Oklahoma Forestry, they hired Davy Resource to do an iTree analysis, and this only covered about 3.23 square miles. And so that was within parks land where they assessed 134 different city parks. So this is, in the grand scheme of things, a 621 square mile city. This is a very small area that was assessed. However, the benefits that those areas that were assessed that are providing, are tremendous. So the trees providing upwards of $43,000 in environmental benefits, both from the carbon that they sequester and also the stormwater, and totaling up to about 3.6 million gallons of avoided runoff. So trees can be used definitely for to stave off the urban heat, provide shading and cooling areas, but they also serve a very, very important erosion control and stormwater purpose that and not to mention the carbon avoidance that they can sequester. So totaling about 5,000 automobiles, and again, just from about 3.2 square miles of our city of the trees that were assessed. A much larger assessment also took place that was funded by the Community Foundation, the Oklahoma City Community Foundation, and Forestry Services. This report looked at about a 536 square mile area covering, most of the urbanized area in the Oklahoma City metro. And so that included a good portion of Oklahoma City, but definitely a tremendous amount north and south and around the edges where we can, to the north and south of Oklahoma City, so that we can look a little bit further at the impacts of where our tree canopy is and where our urbanized area is growing. So this area, this 536 square mile area, has an estimated 64.7 million trees, and they are valued at $35 million, providing an annual net reduction in atmospheric carbon of 133,865 tons. So that would be about the equivalent of 281 1,000 barrels of oil consumed, the benefit that these trees are providing. So, you can look at certain aspects of the data within these things. And again, the ACOG was involved in this study and helped put this in a very digestible manner, and was sure to have GIS layers and things that people can interact with and look a lot closer at the hotspots that exist where trees aren't, where it's a lot of impervious surfaces. And so drawing your attention to the table on the left side, when you look at the urbanized area versus the non-urbanized area, we have 10% less tree canopy, but we have 30% more impervious surfaces in the urbanized area, which makes total sense. That's what makes it the urbanized area. But that does say that we have a good amount of area that we need to be looking at and potentially addressing in some way, or providing additional tree coverage. MAPS 3, I would be remiss without mentioning the 36-acre upper park that's been built, and the 34-acre lower park that is in progress of being built as a very big heat sink and stormwater repository for downtown. There's a lake for retention. There's large, you can kind of see some of the circles around down here in the 2019 picture of the rain gardens that people can see and interact with. Very informative educational information that's included with those. Of course, MAPS 3 included a substantial investment in sidewalks to connect those other pedestrian gaps. But again, for the purpose of this presentation, the importance of this park is huge, and huge for being right in the middle of downtown, one of the most urbanized areas of the city. So again, heat plays a big role in stormwater runoff and some of the challenges that it creates. But also it creates some challenges for electricity and our electricity demand. So as we despite having some of the lowest prices of electricity in the country, we do use more per capita than the national averages. So the low price has incentivized more use. Demand and prices are both expected to increase in the coming years. There's cost recovery mechanisms going to the Corporation Commission that will increase the price of electricity, but also we expect overall demand to go up. So if we're already using more per capita than the national averages, that's likely going to increase with longer, hotter summers. And one study showed that electricity demand for air conditioning increased approximately anywhere from 1% to 9% for every 2 degrees increase in temperature. So, again, if we're talking about a whole nother month of 100+ degree days, you can see kind of how that adds up pretty quickly. Some things that we're looking at in the plan to help mitigate these challenges would include both existing buildings, public and private, new construction using building codes and energy modeling for new construction of city buildings, and then just some operational changes that can be incorporated to help lower that demand and again prepare for these more extreme conditions. The chart on the right shows the progression of efficiencies gained through the newest iterations of building codes. Right now, in terms of the energy codes that we have adopted in the city, we have the 2009 IECC 2009, and so what we'd like to see is continuing to look at that standard. Is that working? Is that something that we're seeing benefits from? Because as we move forward, the story I like to tell or the example I like to give is an out-of-state builder comes into town and builds something super fast and cheap and quick and doesn't have to make it energy efficient, and then laces it out to an Oklahoma small business. Well, the inefficiencies of that building is coming out of the bottom line of that Oklahoma small business. And so it's in everybody's best interest to kind of build more efficient facilities going forward. Residential electrical permits for solar is another thing that we're seeing a pretty dramatic increase year over year from 2021 year to date. And it's not quite to date. It's actually, that data is through about the 10th of this month. So we have probably another 10 days or so of electrical permits for residential. So we're looking very, very interestingly at this. So there's not a tremendous amount of information related to consumer protections and things that go into projections when a solar installer can come in and they can juke the stats just like anybody else. that selling something can. And again, that's not something we're hearing widespread reports of, but we definitely don't want to hear that. And so one program that we're looking at is a Solarize program that we've seen done in several other cities, Atlanta, and the example given here is Asheville Buncombe. And so that's a program where it's a group buy effort that can bring down the cost of getting into solar. And so you can get free solar evaluations. And again, we want people to invest in solar if it's right for them and if it makes sense for their household budgets and for their household energy consumption, given the net metering situation that we have in Oklahoma City, where it is, or excuse me, in Oklahoma by and large, where it is, we receive wholesale rates rather than retail rates whenever you're selling things back to the grid. So again, we see this as a very big opportunity for education and outreach about solar, how it works, how contracts work, and the importance of making sure that just because something sounds like a good deal, we want residents to understand fully, what goes into that. But again, there's more information to come on that, and that will probably be something that launches in 2022 with the help of a couple of partners and several community partners. So more information to come on that piece. The next chapter is waste reduction that I'll touch on. And again, this chapter, we look at the strategies that will extend the life of 3 active landfills in Oklahoma City by increasing waste diversion and positioning Oklahoma City to work towards a circular economy that reduces waste and fosters space for new and expanded post-consumer industries. So while this data is a few years old, admittedly, in the chart, the breakdown is largely consistent year over year. And everything else category is kind of the one we want to highlight here. So what you're seeing on the purple chart, or the purple piece of the pie, and is broken out by municipality, is a good estimation of what we contribute to the landfills from our residential programs, including bulk waste collections, the routine bulk waste collections. So again, Oklahoma City being the largest city, of course, our residential program is contributing more to these 3 landfills combined. However, that everything else is the biggest part of the pie here. And so that includes industrial waste, construction, demolition stuff, office, commercial, all of these things that the city doesn't have a specific program for, but we would like to be able to help with, and would like to be able to see those landfills be able to last a little bit longer, because again, the options get few and far between when we start looking to relocate a landfill, and then increasing the drive times and the costs associated with just hauling trash outside the city could be a real challenge. So So moving on, one thing that compounds that is again a climate impact of cascading costs. Again, I mentioned the October ice storm with lots of vegetation. This is a picture from my backyard of right after that happened, and some power challenges. We were out of power for 12 days. And again, I'm sure many of you on the call have examples or have experienced probably very similar conditions. But the big challenge here was the time it took to clean up. And again, this is not a comment about city staff and response times. It's just about the sheer volume of waste. There was, I believe, more than 100,000 tons, which is about a little bit less than half of what we send to the landfill on an annual basis from our residential programs. So all of that happening over the course of 3 days being generated, and then slowly has to go to the landfill. So those are things that it's difficult to plan for, but there are, those are things that are going to happen. We can expect these types of things to be happening and contributing to our landfill. So even more important that we're reducing the other components that are going into the landfill on a regular basis. So finally, I'm here. I have arrived to Floatables, and this is where I can address. The city does not have any policies or looking at any policies to address our most common floatables, which is basically auxiliary containers, as it's referred to here in Senate Bill 1001, that was signed on April 23rd of 2019. So this basically prevents the city from regulating or seeking to ban any plastic bags, anything like styrofoam containers or expanded polystyrene containers, the little clamshells, coffee cups, these types of things. So municipalities, it says pretty clearly that don't have a role to play in that in Oklahoma. However, We've participated in several community cleanup events, and this one from Oliver Park on the south side it was just from a couple of months ago, and several from DEQ. I think there were 40 DEQ employees that were out here helping pick up trash. And again, anyone who's been on one of these can tell you the thing that we are picking up is single-use plastics. So being banned from regulating the thing that is the biggest scourge to our waterways creates a real challenge and a real challenging environment when we know prevention is the best solution to this. We can pick it up, we can skim all the things and try to keep things healthy, but prevention is the way forward and the way to keep this from being a thing that pollutes our waterways. So kind of a real challenging situation, but not the only example of the state preempting the city's ability to deal with issues within our city. With our air quality chapter, we are looking by and large at avoiding emissions, both criteria pollutants and the greenhouse gases, CO2 and methane. So criteria pollutants contribute to our attainment designation. And again, this chart has a lot going on, admittedly, but what it's showing is our air quality readings, which is the fourth highest reading from each given year, and then that's averaged over 3 years. And so we see the way the air quality has gone, and actually the red line represents the EPA's threshold of what we cannot exceed. And so our air quality is moving on a trend line in a good direction. However, the things that this regulates, criteria pollutants, are oxides of nitrogen, volatile organic compounds, and when these things are present in the or when these things are largely come from tailpipe emissions. So when those are present with sunlight on hot windless days, then that creates ground level ozone or smog. And so that's basically what we're trying to avoid. It creates very terrible conditions, health conditions for people with respiratory illnesses. But then it also can be an economic challenge for the city that I won't go too much further into. Again, no surprise but if we look at CO2 emissions from households, tailpipe emissions, it's a lot of development on the periphery, and then people coming into work. All of our commutes are by 80% of them are single occupancy vehicles. So looking at alternatives like the Bike Walk OKC is the city's first bicycle and pedestrian master plan. So encouraging people who can and are able to do so safely to bike and walk. And we're again encouraging people to do so with protected infrastructure, so people do feel more safe on certain corridors and connecting those plans together. And then also alternative fuels. So if we don't foresee a future where Oklahoma City is entirely reliant on transit and biking and walking, people are going to continue to drive. But if those single occupant vehicles could be low or no emissions, that would also help us get to remain in attainment and not reach that threshold. So Embark's investment began in 2016. That's the transit agency here. And they have a goal by 2025 to replace its entire bus fleet with compressed natural gas or electric buses. So they already have 21 CNG buses and plan for 8 more through a federal sustainability grant from the FTA. So Embark doing really good things for the community. And again, electric vehicles, there's a lot more to come on that from the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and a tremendous amount of money coming from the federal government to both states and cities to invest in charging infrastructure and things. So other investments the city's making, bus rapid transit, that's going to connect 40,000+ residents to about 91,000 jobs. It's an 8-mile route to begin with. It's going to have great interactions with bike lanes, make safer walking and pedestrian connections to these bus routes along highly traveled corridors. MAPS 4 is bringing expansions of the BRT route to the northeast and south, at least looking at those. So again, the more transit options and reliable transit options that we have, the better off that we're going to be. And then I mentioned the code update. This is the process of trying to make our municipal code and our comprehensive plan align quite a bit better to help achieve some of the benefits and protections that are included both in Plan OKC and Adapt OKC. And again, this is a multi-phase project that's working to implement Plan OKC with addressing the challenges with existing regulations and then responding to feedback receive from users. So again, here's the URL, and there'll be more meetings and information about the code update to come, but you can sign up for updates at that website. And then finally, this is my last slide. This is Oklahoma. This is our contact information of both myself and Ryan Baker. We are the entire sustainability office, the two of us. And so, feel free to contact us anytime. But again, the image in the background is Oklahoma City downtown during the Dust Bowl. And again, it stands as a reminder that we've faced environmental and economic crises before, and we've responded to and recovered from those by recognizing the cause and effect of human activities and introducing public policy interventions. And we just changed the way we did things. So again, I will leave it there, and happy to take any questions that may be there if there's time for those.
What a great presentation. That was fantastic. I was glued to my screen. Thank you so much. I don't see any questions at this time. We've got a thank you from Derek. So good job. We'll keep an eye on chat here in the next minute or so, if you don't mind hanging out for just a little bit longer, Tio.
Sure.
Okay, cool. So if anyone does have any questions, as Tio mentioned, please do type those into chat. Up next, our Community Relations Coordinator, Brooke Varick, will provide some outreach summaries for our 2021 programs that are helping keep our community clean here locally. Brooke, if you're ready.
Yes, let me get my screen shared. All right, does that look correct?
I can see it. Looks great.
All right. Okay, so I'm just going to take about 5 minutes to kind of give you an overview of our outreach programs this year and some of the things that we were able to accomplish. Just as a reminder, a lot of you have heard this parts of this presentation before, so I'll kind of breeze through the first couple slides. But we do a number of different outreach initiatives, such as our school education outreach. We're very involved with different volunteer programs with our residents. We have different permitting training and education workshops, such as our webinar series and then our lunch and learns that are going to be coming up next year. We have our household hazardous waste facility advertising campaign. So you may have seen some of those advertisements around the metro on billboards. You may hear some on the radio coming up in the spring. We have our quarterly newsletter. So some of you may be receiving that. If you're interested in receiving that, let me know and I can get you signed up. And then we also have various special events throughout the year. So we completed our special collection event, multiple different trade shows, fairs, booth setups, our Rain Barrel event, which we will be having again next May, and Earth Day. And then we're also part of COSWA, which is the Central Oklahoma Stormwater Alliance. So these are our volunteer programs. So if some of you may have participated in one of these programs throughout the year, TO and the planning office completed a Waterway clean sweep. You saw a picture of it from all of the trash and debris they collected during their one-day cleanup. So you too can participate in a cleanup like that. So some of our total volunteer hours and programs for the year for Waterway for 2021, we've concluded our cleanups for the year. We totaled in at 13 total cleanups, 249 volunteers, 660 volunteer hours, 687 bags of trash, and over 14,000 pounds of trash collected by our volunteers out of our waterways. And as you can see in the photo on this slide, you can see in that bottom right corner, there is exactly what is happening, the floatables on top. They were pulling out all of those plastic bottles, styrofoam, anything that floats to the top of the water. For our Adopted City Street, we have 2 more cleanups scheduled for 2021, but we have a very good idea of how many events and volunteers we had to participate this year. So we've had 82 events, 705 volunteers participate, 622 bags of trash collected, and then approximately 7,500 pounds of trash. And this photo is one of our Boy Scout troops that is involved, that we highlighted this year for having outstanding cleanups every single time. They're very dedicated to their section of road, and they did a great job this year. So as Rebecca mentioned, we will be having our 2022 virtual education series. I sent the first invitation email, I believe it was last week. If you did not receive the email, please reach out to me and let me know, because I need to get you added onto our email list. And she also gave you the link to sign up, but if you need help signing up, let me know and I can help you out with that. And that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Tio, for giving an amazing presentation. It was very eye-opening to see how OKC has evolved over the years and just where we're headed. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Brooke.
Thank you, Brooke, so much. Great information, of course, as always. And we did put Brooke's email address into chat. Also for TO, we do have one question from Rick. He says, many states have deposits on containers to encourage return. Why can't Oklahoma do that? Do you have any insight into that? Oh, did we lose him? Okay, looks like we have lost him. Connectivity issues are challenging. All right, Rick, we'll try to get an answer for your question there and get that emailed out to you later. All right, so let's see. As a reminder, if anyone would like to receive a certificate of attendance for today's presentation, please send Brooke an email to request it. Please don't request any certificates of attendance from or via chat, because we may not have your email address linked to your username on Teams. We should be able to get those certificates out within the next week or so. Of course, we've got the holiday coming up, so might be a little bit delayed. As I've mentioned, a recording of today's presentation will be available on our website in the next week or so, again, pending the holiday. But we'll put that and some other links into chat right now. Let's see. Yep, we've got the request for certificate of attendance, 2022 webinar series. And let me get today's. Got too many things to copy and paste here. Okay, and then there's the link for our webpage where we have all of these recorded and pre-populated presentations ready for you guys to review at any time. So thank you again for attending today's session. We hope everyone enjoyed the presentation. We'll see you next year, I hope. Make sure you sign up for our 2022 Stormwater Quality Webinar Series. It'll be on Wednesdays instead of Tuesdays. So we'll be doing Wednesdays next year at 1 o'clock. So be sure to sign up for that series and our vendor sponsored lunch and learn events. And we hope you all have a great afternoon. I'll hang out here for just a little bit in case anyone has any final questions.